Well, some people will find this description of future humanity a tad optimistic. Welcome to the galaxy, theoretically the one we live in. When you create a galaxy for a new game, most of it is procedurally generated, with a bunch of options for customization. But if you play as the United Nations of Earth, you will at least see some familiar features before you set out, before you explore and expand, and have your dun 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 moment. The old gal, as in old galaxy, is here for you to survey, study, and marvel at. Its planets to be settled and its resources exploited, and thus they're there to be contested and fought over as well. You are not alone. There are different species and empires out there with different politics and ethics. Grand strategy in space, but not turn-based. And you take over solar systems instead of provinces. And 1 second on normal speed is like 1 day in-game time. And the victory conditions kind of remind me of those in Civilizations. But there are no ultimate objectives in the different fields, and a score victory represents the best possible scenario, instead of the consolation victory when no civilization achieves anything particularly noteworthy. The faction with the most points at the end of a whopping 300 years wins, as long as a galactic crisis isn't tearing through the place. They're being destroyed by energy beings. Sure, that's awful, but it buys you more time and removes a few rivals. It's a game of phases. The first few years, you survey systems, expand and build star bases. Mining and research stations too. Find a planet with high habitability for your particular species, and establish your first colony. And you might find anomalies or evidence of alien life, but you'll still be lonely. Then your empire starts to form, you find more planets, hopefully the kind that your critters like, and you start meeting other spacefaring civilizations. You start learning their language and establish diplomatic relations. But there probably will still be unclaimed systems between you. You will also get excited by more anomalies and more research, and possibly by the prospect of improving your planets. Who doesn't love a bit of infrastructure development? Still, things are quiet. Then a race starts to fill in the stellar gaps. Maybe you start fighting non-faction enemies. You know, the kind of enemies you don't expect to have empires. Pirates, space whales, amoebas, you know what I'm talking about. Here your fleet becomes important and you start to build ships if you haven't already. You can design your ships if you want to. But the visual template is fixed for the faction, and if you don't design a ship, the best possible propulsion and weaponry will be selected from your research tech, or at the very least the newest. Maybe there's a reason to pick something older, not enough benefit compared to the price, or maybe you're low on a particular resource and need parts that don't use them. But I just didn't bother, especially since the tech improves so quickly, meaning replacement of parts isn't that far off. And then you start finding out that the infinite abyss of space has much less of it than you thought, and things start getting cramped. Oh, and you start meeting more species. A galactic community starts to form, and members will start voting on laws. Things start to get tense. So you either play nice or start to bomb planets. Also beware population growth and planetary unemployment, trying to maximize your potential employment capacity and make the most of the limited space on your planet. Newer tech, stronger economies, more planets, more people, larger armadas made up of massive pieces of metal with weapons attached, and more war or more peace depending on how you play. And then finally, Galactic Crisis, which can make even the most peaceful empire pull out their lasers. So clearly defined existing grand strategy game moments that offer new gameplay. We see that in the similarities. The Galactic Crisis, a massive enemy force entering the map that's a threat to all the factions. That's in medieval Total War too, as well as Total War Warhammer. But in this game it felt a whole lot more like teamwork actually. Maybe because fighting the Crisis enemy actually adds points to your score. So maybe there was more of an incentive for those far away to help. And I can't help but remember Civilizations 5 when I see how they handled traditions in this game. And filling in the stellar gaps is similar to what happens in Civilizations, but the star systems thing makes it feel fresh. Arguably this game is less slash and burn than Total War, although I assume you can play that way if you want. You can have fun, mostly being peaceful, as long as you stake your claim early enough and trap enough gas to form a suitably sized empire. Then you can focus on politics and development within the early lines you drew for yourself, as long as you invest enough in the military to ensure no one erases notice them. And the gameplay elements are fun. It's fun to develop your planets, produce more, have more trade routes, have a happier populace. Finding anomalies is exciting. Completing their research quests grant you a nice little reward. They actually represent most of the story in the game. That and species bios. And they're lovely little things to focus on. Other than that, as is usually the case in the genre, it's more about the stories you write in blood, or type as part of a galactic trade agreement. And combat isn't involved, just select your ships and right-click, wait until done. Should work out if the estimated strength of your army is larger than theirs. It's a waiting game, but battles produce a pretty light show. It's just fun to rule an empire of worn space platypi, playing politician, choosing your traditions, as well as what your government stands for. Are you pacifist or do you revel in war? Are you spiritual and hate AI? This game assumes that those two things go together inherently. Or are you materialistic and prone to synth envy? But there you have robots. Is your vision for your species to be xenophobic enslavers, or xenophilic bastions of galactic diversity who allow immigration and take in refugees, having multi-species populations on at least some planets? And in a lovely bit of realism, different political parties will form in your government that are for and against certain ethics. I mean, we're talking about planets with billions upon billions of people on them. Even in the most utopian society, some people are going to disagree. Will you pander to them? Or are the people in the way of your vision? And species have pros and cons, which you can change with a little bit of genetic engineering. Funnily enough, they don't resist that one bit. Platypus Smash? There are a bunch of pre-made factions, but you can create your own with their own look. Pigs in space. Ethics, civics, homeworld type, ship look, and arguably most pleasing, their own names for ships, people, and planets, etc. At least from a list of options. People had the frustrating job of coming up with these. We thank you. After my first dabble of a run with the humans, on the next run, armed with knowledge, I was accidentally deposited next to mostly peaceable aliens and species that weren't strong enough to be a threat. So I could focus on raking in the credits, projecting just enough strength to make that possible. No worries really, especially since for most of the game, these hyperlanes act as choke points. Otherwise, these borders would look scary. And thus I don't know much about how war works in this game. I mean, most of my people had no interest in war. I'm guessing war is quite exhausting, because fighting out self-defense was kind of exhausting. Traveling over distances in this game takes a while, then include the fighting, time for building units, so arguably conquering others is a slow and lumbering process. Much like everything else in this game. Visually, the game is nice. It's fun to see your colored piece of territory, your patch of star. It's fun to gaze over your star systems, see your planets and whatnot. These are my toys, and they look rather pretty. As wrong as this sounds, I own a few fusion reactions. Neat! The celestial bodies look rather pretty, even if most of what you see is space dust. Zoom out enough as to encompass the entire galaxy, or close enough to see the smallest type of ship. Get endorphins from seeing you exploit those resources. And I suppose the 2D representation of species is pretty good as well, if it is the kind of hand-drawn that I'm not too big a fan of. Maybe kind of a stilted animation, but they don't move much. Yeah, I forgot. Supposedly humanoids are gonna be reaching the age of 200 or something. That's totally gonna happen. Excuse my skepticism, but you'd think people would learn from 2001. And musically, the game is nice enough as well. Has some awe of space music. Ooh, a clarinet. Sometimes soothing, other times calming, rarely sinister, to accompany this new age of space exploration and politics. Not the best music, but pretty good. My second and true run took 42 hours conservatively, not counting the 10 or so hours I played around with the faction creator, as well as my first run with the humans, etc. Imagine the kind of hours you'll be able to put in if you think you'll replay this. Although these aren't established land masses or anything like in a Total War game, and you don't see much of the faction personality, unlike Total War's 3D models, or their histories and what have you, so maybe while replayable, not as replayable as one of those games. You'll just be ruling a differently sized and shaped blob of vacuum. The game is cheap on Steam, 285 Rand full price, 71 Rand 25 on sale. That's 1 Rand 70 per hour of gameplay, which is quite good. Its DLC policy is annoying though, but I had fun with the base game. It does have a large download size however, as it takes up 14.86 gigabytes on the hard drive, and it doesn't really work on the Warhorse. I started a new faction. It seemed to work in the early days, when not much of the galaxy has been filled out or discovered, but there were some stutters. And that's a problem, because when it's full on the largest galaxy games, it stuttered a bit on my gaming PC, and thus I'm not showing the card that says it works on the Warhorse. You will probably need something stronger to play it properly. Although in all fairness that it worked at all is actually quite impressive. Stereotypically, I'm going to say it's kid-friendly. You don't see the mayhem of space combat up close. The only objectionable things I can think of now are the fact that you can be xenophobic, and you can choose to enslave or purge species. But otherwise it's fine. The game has nice visuals, strange 2D aliens, if I'm not a fan of the style of drawing, nice combat light shows, and zooming ability. You get to see the beauty of orbiting rocks that you own. But usually you'll be seeing space. Sure, space that different factions own, and stamp their faction colors onto. Lovely for those of us who love control, but space, if that's going to be a problem. It has nice splendor of space music that makes you feel the beauty and peril of this new time of exploration. It's fun to explore, find anomalies, expand, settle planets, develop, and the other grand strategy elements are nice enough. The combat is simple. I found little use for the ship design. The diplomacy is recognizable, and by that I mean it's very noticeable that you're playing against AI, as is common to the genre. It tends to dehumanize the factions if anything. But it's really cool that you can let in refugees from other species. That actually humanizes things, even though humans don't have to be involved. Lovely to have a multi-species planet. It's also cool how the crisis is really powerful and hard to deal with, and it feels a little bit more like teamwork, like you're actually working together with the other factions to deal with it. The gameplay of runs is imaginarily divided up in phases, and your focus shifts as you play, meaning more variety in the run. It's spread out over a larger period of time. It's not just take over the rebel cities near you, and then slowly but surely take over the surrounding enemies like a machine. That's how I view Total War. Harsh, but I'm a fan. So less harsh. Species creation, galaxy creation, and procedural generation make for a more unique grand strategy experience. This actually adds more replayability, as the theater of war will be different from game to game, with new species, etc. Sure, some of the species can look awfully similar, and as said, what there is to see is kind of lacking to truly encourage a full new run, but still nice. On the maybe side, no stories apart from the species bios and anomalies. As grand strategy, you create your own stories, perhaps more so because of all those creation elements I mentioned in the pros. Only Iron Man mode unlocks achievements, so no save, try something then load. There is a pause and play function, and it probably encouraged forward momentum and me not to pull my hair out. If you want to be harsh, it kind of plays like a hybrid of other games in the genre. It has civilizations, factions slowly settling empty space, as well as the approach to resources, and it has Total War's diplomacy and crisis situations, combined with a kind of Sins of a Solar Empire representation. On the con side, I felt that peace is much easier than war, as I took to it like a duck to water. It's absolute punishment. Come on, play it. It's kind of like an RTS version of the space stage in Spore, except more user-friendly for larger empires. Well, that's not a gag. But I suppose this is pretty funny though. At one point my empire looked like a giant yellow space whale. This happened accidentally, but we can all enjoy it. choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.